Out of reach, past all we can see, hear and touch, beyond all we understand, lies the extraordinary. The extraordinary is this unexplained noise recorded deep in the Australian outback. An alien sound with no worldly source. The sound made by mystery crop circles.
What we found was a ring. It looks like a coiled snake with a bit of a head on it, and it was very magnetised to the extent where if you ran a normal compass, which is very unusual, over it, it would swing the compass needle.
It is the two young boys who owe their lives to one man's instinct. A freak rescue at sea that should not have happened.
All of a sudden I jumped up to my feet, and I don't know why, and grabbed the binoculars off the chart table as I came by and went back on deck. Finally I thought, I think there's somebody waving.
The extraordinary is the eternal love story of Dr. Martineau and the bride he keeps frozen in the basement of his castle.
I'll give you a ride.
It is the familiar, eerie voice that told late actor Telly Savalas about the death of John F. Kennedy an hour and a half before it happened.
Oh, God. That's how I was.
The extraordinary is the little bird that helped jockey Jim Cassidy win the Melbourne Cup on a horse named after the most famous bird of all.
Kiwis come from last in a phenomenal performance.
Just some of the stories that lie beyond our normal understanding. Tonight on The Extraordinary.
The secret behind Kiwi's win is now part of racing folklore. Good evening, I'm Warwick Moss. They appear out of nowhere, strange, unexplained shapes carved in fields around the world. Monstrous, symmetrical patterns etched on desolate landscapes. They're called crop circles, and no one knows how or why they appear. Incredibly enough, between May and August last year, more than 130 of these bizarre shapes appeared in Britain alone. Crop circles have been filmed and photographed in the past, but no one has ever heard the mysterious sounds they make until tonight. Scientists are baffled at the noises recorded deep in the Australian outback. You can see them. You can even touch them. They've been appearing in England for almost a century, but no one has been able to explain them. Swirling circles, intricate geometric designs on a grand scale that cut a swathe through vast areas of cropland. Theories abound. Meteorological forces, messages from out of space, a man-made hoax. All have been investigated, but the mystery of the crop circles remains as unfathomable as ever. And now, from outback Australia, another clue in this intriguing puzzle. These sounds were recorded in the very centre of one Australian crop circle, far from cities and from civilization. This is the first time they've been broadcast anywhere in the world. And even though the experts have played them over and over, fed them through computer after computer, analysed them and re-analysed them, the secret of these sounds has never been unlocked.
The difference between England and Australia is that our areas are totally remote.
John Ockertell, a commercial airline pilot, is one of Australia's leading researchers in this highly specialised field. He's seen the circles, heard the sounds, and investigated them thoroughly.
The main patterns we get in Australia are basically a complete flattening of the ring. In other words, a whole central process, the whole ring is completely flattened in either an anti-clockwise circle or a clockwise circle. Also, you'll find a star pattern. You'll have a large one in the centre, and to the outside extremes you'll have 4 small ones. So there's symmetry involved.
John Ockertell is no newcomer to this research. He's been there since the beginning. The first circle was discovered in Australia in 1940. In the last 50 years or so, hundreds of crop circles have appeared in Australia, all of them in this remote 10,000 square kilometre area around the borders of New South Wales, South Australia and Victoria. Out here it's hot, it's dry, it's wheat country, right in the middle of nowhere. Just over that way is what they call the big desert wilderness. The nearest real town is 2 hours that way. This part of Australia is known as Sunset Country because of the red sandy soil. The white man found it hard to tame, but Aboriginal tribes have roamed here for 40,000 years. It's a land of legends and mystery, none more intriguing than the mystery of the crop circles. It's a mystery that crept into the lives of Rex and Nance Jolly in 1989. They're no-nonsense, hard-working country folk who have worked on the land all their lives. In the summer of '89, all their gambles and their toil was about to pay off. As far as the eye could see was the season's bumper wheat crop, ready for the harvest to begin.
When we hired the contractors to come in to strip our wheat, they'd stripped quite a few acres, and then this morning they were sailing along down a rise and they could see ahead of them these things that they'd never seen before.
Those things the contractor saw from his harvester were strange circles, perfect shapes, imprinted on the wheat fields. His first reaction was to call Nance and Rex.
He just said, "You've got to do something about this. It's once in a lifetime you'd see something like this." But we were amazed and didn't know what to do, we didn't know what we were looking at.
When they regained their composure, the first thing the Jollies did was take these photographs. The second was contact the expert, John Ockertell, who set off immediately for Sunset Country.
What we discovered was 11 rings. They were in a half-moon shape. The largest were at the top of the ridge, away from the homestead. And as you work closer towards the homestead and the fence, the rings got consequently smaller.
John Ockertell found that the wheat itself was not damaged in any way. The stalks were not broken, just bent at the base. Somehow, they'd been woven into an intricate pattern, something like a straw basket. As for the soil around the circles, it was sandy and soft as normal. But inside the circles, the soil was very different indeed. It was as hard as a rock. It was tough work taking soil samples. In fact, they had to use a crowbar to prise them free. The samples were sent off to Monash University in Melbourne for analysis. At first, the results did not look that promising. The soil was unusually high in iron oxide, but it didn't contain any strange elements. Then the researchers found a clue that sent them back to their computers for another look.
What we found was there was very little bacterial life, which is very unusual in soil. In the ring section, in the normal soil, there's a lot of normal bacterial life.
And there was more. the university computers revealed that there was an unexplained magnetic charge emanating from one corner of the farm, right where the circles had formed. Armed with this new information, John Ockertell headed back to the Jollies wheat field. He pinpointed the exact spot and began a new series of tests.
What we found was a ring. It looks like a coiled snake with a bit of a head on it, and it was very magnetised to the extent where if you ran a normal compass, which is very unusual, over it, it would swing the compass needle.
To this day, John Ockertell can't explain that magnetic charge. It, like the crop circles, remains a mystery. But there was to be one further piece of evidence that would prove even more mysterious. Another local farmer had noticed his sheep refused to go anywhere near one of the circles. And when he went to investigate, he heard a strange noise. A noise that literally made him sick. That farmer had the presence of mind to record the sound. What he captured on tape was this. The sound we played you earlier.
We then got that tape and went ahead and analysed, and what they did, they scrubbed all the machine noises and the noises on the tape, and they discovered there's a frequency of 5.12 kilohertz.
When John Ockertell studied the computer breakdown of the sound, there was another surprise, another discovery. The sound reminded him of one recorded by a BBC television crew while they were filming at the site of a crop circle in England.
A BBC crew attached a radio microphone to Pat Delgado. As he walked in the circle, it picked up mysterious sounds.
No, it's here. That's a terrible noise, just as you stand in the centre.
You're getting a noise there, Richard?
Very, very bad indeed.
Yeah, I can hear it here. I can feel it here.
This is our old friend back there.
It is. Yeah.
Is it a pulse?
It's like...
I think it's about here.
An electronic sparrow, really, is the best description.
That's it.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah. This is the same noises we're having analysed at Sussex now.
Just in the centre of the circle.
Now the funny thing is that our sound is in the same range as the one that was discovered in England, so it's maybe very important.
But there's more to the Sunset Country mystery than strange, unexplained noises and circles that appear out of nowhere. It happened on a night just like this, 15 years ago. The sky was still and crystal clear. As usual, Eric Wilson and his two daughters were relaxing in front of the TV after a hard day's work in the farm. Their peace was about to be disturbed.
The dog started to make a very peculiar whining and howling noise. It was, well, I hadn't heard before, and I haven't heard it since, actually. I came outside to investigate what the problem was and saw this light above, over the dam.
Girls, come and look at this!
Eric's daughter, Jeanette, recalls that this blinding light shone over the farm for a minute or two.
We could see this object hovering in the sky with a flashing light on the top and a dome across the other side of the dam bank.
Then, just as suddenly as the light and the object appeared, they simply disappeared. The Wilson family reported the sighting to the police, who did make some inquiries. It wasn't the first, nor the last such sighting in Sunset Country. So, is there a link between the lights and the circles? Some say it's just too much of a coincidence. There has to be a connection. But in the realms of science, there's no such speculation. Even though most down-to-earth theories, too, have been discounted. They've said no to vortex wind drafts and whirlwinds because the wheat plants have not been damaged in any way. No to plasma balls and fireballs, because there's no evidence of charring or burning. And no to animals, because there have never been tracks leading to or from the circles. So, maybe there's only one way left to end the guessing game.
We're hoping in the future. We've got equipment up there at the moment, and last year, for instance, we had equipment available where we were hoping to see one formed or see the process. Once we get to see the process occurring, then we may be able to put a theory to it.
Until that day, one thing is a scientific certainty. Crop circles do exist. They have appeared in many countries: England, the United States, Canada, and Australia. The only problem is, we still don't know who or what is creating them. Within all the world's great love stories, there is tragedy. Romeo and Juliet, Antony and Cleopatra, Bogey and Bacall. And then there is this story of the bride of Dr. Martineau. Their story is never ending.
Her name is Monique, and today she rests peacefully deep inside her 16th century chateau in the Loire Valley, 2 hours from Paris, France. Monique is beautiful as the Loire countryside is beautiful, and beautiful they will remain for eternity. On this day, Monique awaits the arrival of her husband of 30 years, Dr. Raymond Martineau. As he enters his decaying castle, Dr. Martineau does not call out for his wife. He knows in which room she rests. It is the room along the hallway, down the steps past the gallery of his deceased family, along another hallway, and down more steps still. Monique is in the basement. Martineau approaches with reverence and prayer. It is a personal ritual, one that Martineau goes through every day during the summer months and once a month in winter. He brings flowers for his frozen bride, who lies in a state of suspended death since that day he placed her in this industrial freezer in 1984. Dr. Martineau believes in cryogenics, the supremely optimistic scientific theory that if frozen at death, the human body might be returned to life by advanced medicine sometime in the future. He also believes in do-it-yourself. He built the sub-zero tomb by modifying an industrial freezer, one not that different from the adjacent refrigerator in which he keeps his meat and poultry.
The feeling with my wife in the box, my feeling is she's not destroyed under the ground, and that this induces in my mind she is somewhere, but not easy to explain.
Originally, Dr. Martineau, a gynecologist, planned to be the only resident, but Monique passed away first, 10 years ago, from ovarian cancer. He hopes to rejoin her one day. He's not sure when, but he dreams of their reanimated life on Earth.
I think that in the future, progress of science will be huge, will be great, and there is no problem for reanimation.
Although the freezer was designed for only one person, Dr. Martineau has arranged the final resting place so that he too will fit next to Monique when the time comes. He will be vacuum packed.
There is a preview that I can go to the ice machine, in the freezing machine.
That arrangement will be in the hands of his son, to whom Martineau must entrust their eternity. For Dr. Martineau, the dream is of an ultimate reunion on Earth with his Monique.
My wife was a very sweet girl, very kind, and very pretty. And we are in good accordance.
In the nearby town of Douai-la-Fontaine, the local people know of the unusual content of Dr. Martineau's basement. Some think he's crazy, others just eccentric. But only Dr. Martineau dreams clearly the details of the future, the day when Monique can return to her boudoir, a room which he keeps perfectly decorated, exactly as it was the day she died. A children's book sits permanently on Monique's bedside bureau, La Belle au Bois Dormant, and day after day, Martineau dreams of the moment when his sleeping beauty awakes.
Is the one part of nature that man has often challenged, but never tamed. An unpredictable force, the world's oceans can be calm and serene, but within hours, a boiling cauldron in which nothing can survive. Some of the best prepared sailors and boats have found the seas a deadly grave. So what chance survival if you're not prepared? This is the story of a freakish event that took place during the Sydney to Hobart yacht race more than 30 years ago. In her day, the racing sloop Janzoon was in a class of her own, the pride of the Pacific. She was also the pride and joy of her skipper, Russell Slade, the man who helped design and build this 42-foot beauty. Today, Russ is back on board Janzoon for the first time in around 20 years.
It's a beautiful boat to sail in. It's dry and it's comfortable, and she gets you there. And you can have the biggest seas in the world come aboard, and she's had big ones, and she just gets you through. Just beautiful.
With Russ are two trusty old shipmates, Rick Hammond and Dick Norman, who were aboard from the beginning and helped steer Janzoon to victory in many an ocean classic.
We knew each other's strengths and weaknesses, and we were very, and still are, a very close bond between all of us. And I love the boat. I actually had my honeymoon on this boat, and so it's very, very dear to me.
At this reunion, all three were reliving past glories, the Sydney to Hobart race of 1963 in particular. It was a triumph for Janzoon and the crew. Second overall, first in their division. It was also the time of a dramatic rescue at sea, a rescue many described as a miracle. Early on the morning of Sunday, January the 13th, Janzoon was making her leisurely way back to Sydney after a gruelling race and an equally gruelling celebration in Hobart. The sloop was 35 kilometres off the southern New South Wales coast. Russ Slade was at the helm. Without warning, and to this day without explanation, he felt a sudden impulse to change course.
I promptly wanted to bring the boat around on another tack. And there was a great scream from down below wanting to know why I wanted to do it. There was no sense in it. And I agreed with that, but there was some urge came within me that wanted to bring that boat around on the other tack.
Russell knew it was crazy, and his mates told him so, in no uncertain terms. They convinced him to put Janzoon back on course. But that lasted only about 5 minutes. The crazy impulse returned, and Russ Slade changed tack again. At the time, navigator Rick Hammond thought his skipper had finally snapped.
I can't really quite understand why he kept on doing it. It's just so extraordinary. And I think he said to me something like, I just had to do it, Rick, I just had to do it.
Dick Norman thought it was odd too, but didn't argue. He'd had the overnight watch and was desperately tired.
And I was sitting on the side of the boat, enjoying the sail and just glancing around, and all of a sudden something caught my attention out on the horizon. And I couldn't quite make out what it was. And anyway, I said to Slady, there's something out there on the horizon. And I said, he said, it's most really a fishing mark. And I said, something about it that doesn't look like a fishing mark to me. And we had the ocean to ourselves. There wasn't another boat in sight anywhere.
After Russell's aberration at the helm, Dick's sighting was too much for the rest of the crew. They put it down to a trick played by the ocean on a sailor's weary eyes. And with a word of advice for Dick, they set off again for Sydney.
You've been on deck too long and you're seeing things. Go down and have a rest. And so, being a good lad, I took their advice and went down below, and I was lying on the bunk, and I was there for about 10 minutes, quarter of an hour, and all of a sudden I jumped up to my feet, and I don't know why, and grabbed the binoculars off the chart table as I came by and went back on deck. Finally I thought, I think there's somebody waving, and I said to Russell, I think there's somebody waving, trying to attract our attention out there. And I was so determined that there was something wrong, and what it was I didn't really know. And anyway, he took me seriously and he immediately said, righto, we'll pull the boat away and we'll go out and have a look.
It was quite a long way off. It was just visible. To make sure, Dick came and stood up here near the mast, got to a higher altitude in the boat, and with his glasses said, yes, it's, I think, a dinghy or something.
As Janzoon got closer, the dinghy and its occupants became clearer. Now, it wasn't just a matter of seeing things. It was a matter of life and death, literally.
And there were two boys, that little dinghy. The side of the boat from the bow was smashed in. I remember it very well because there was a red rock cod in the back. One fish, one oar, and two young boys. I'd say 14 maximum and 11.
Two inexperienced boys who should never have been out in the open sea. Early that morning, without telling anyone, they'd gone fishing just off the beach. Their 9-foot dinghy was caught in a treacherous current, which swept them kilometres out to sea. They had no fresh water, no food, and no hope of rescue, until the remarkable appearance of Janzoon.
They were in total shock. I think it was the first time I'd ever seen people in total shock. I've seen people in fire accidents and in car accidents, and they're in shock, but never like this. We can all imagine their ordeal when we passed them, say 2 miles off. They frantically waved. No chance of being rescued. And we passed them. must go very close to total shock.
They were so far out at sea, they couldn't swim ashore. There was no other boat in the vicinity. Nobody knew that they were there. And it was just one of those, and they wouldn't have hit the coastline because they were in the southerly set and they would have been taken way down the coast. So there was no chance of them being of a survival for them if we hadn't have been there. So it was just one of those miraculous things that happened.
Remember, it all began when Russell Slade, against all his better judgment, all his experience, changed tack. Not once, but twice.
Coming round unnecessarily, sailing past them, Dick coming up on deck for no reason at all, sighting them quite unexpectedly. That was not an easy thing. It's a big ocean out there.
After the rescue, Janzoon's crew took the boys to shore, where they were reunited with their families. Newspaper reports at the time said they were none the worse for their ordeal, just exhausted, cold and wet, and very, very lucky.
Would have been just one of those unsolved mysteries, two young kids from the country, you know, just disappearing. And I think it all hit home to us too, and that's one of the reasons why we don't speak about it very much, but we often always think about it. And we think of those two young blokes, and we just hope that later on in life that they've realised their experiences and it's helped them in some way.
To this day, Janzoon's crew have never seen the pair again, nor heard a word from them.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could just locate those two men? They'd be 40 odd and 43. Wouldn't it be wonderful to know what happened? It would be lovely to just meet them aboard here for 10 minutes, wouldn't it?
A beloved guest on this show passed away a couple of months ago. The world knew Telly Savalas as the tough, lollipop-chewing detective, Kojak. His friends and family knew him as a magical man of boundless charm and generosity. We got the chance to see that side.
When I say, look, I'm sweet, I'm soft, I'm warm, I'm affectionate. I'm all these dear things that belong in a bedroom. Don't put me on the street shooting people.
Telly was our first celebrity guest on this show. His remarkable story is worth a second look. And there's a postscript that we didn't bring you the first time.
I was never superstitious.
I'll give you a ride.
But then something happened in my life which scared the hell out of me. And for something like that to happen to me is something that I can't understand to this day. God knows how many years ago. Let me think now. 58, 59. It's a lot of years ago. Now, I just left off a date, and it's about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going home to Long Island after dropping her off. And as would happen, I ran out of gas. So I am, start walking through the woods, a wooded area, not the woods, going up, and as I'm doing that, I hear a voice say,
I'll give you a ride.
I turn around, and there's this guy in a Cadillac. And I didn't hear the Cadillac.
You hear the voice, and what do you see?
I see a guy in a white suit, and I hear an effeminate voice. He say, I'll give you a lift. I said, that's very nice. I said, I'm going to a gas station. We get to the gas station, talking very nice. And I'm fumbling around in my pockets. And he says, I'll lend you $1. Well, I didn't ask him for money. And the truth is, I was broke. And I said, well, look, I says, you know, I've worked for the State Department and, well, anyway, give me your name and address, all right? Allow me to mail it to you because I'm very embarrassed. Anyway, I go there, I get a can, pay for the gas. And we start driving back to my car. I put the gas in the car, and I thought that was very nice of him. get to my car, put the gasoline in. He pushes me to get it started. My car starts. I thank him very much. All in all, it's a very lovely experience to meet someone to help you out like that. No incident whatsoever. Go home, go to work in the morning, and then I remembered that he gave me a piece of paper for me to send a buck to. I look at it, and there besides the address is a telephone number. Okay, pick it up and I call the number. Jimmy's Bar. Oh, I said, well, can I speak to Mr. Cullen, please? Oh, Mr. Cullen, just a minute. Woman gets on the phone.
Who's calling?
Hi, may I speak to Mr. Cullen, please?
He's not here.
Well, when do you expect him?
Who is this?
I says, well, I was with Mr. Cullen last night, and he gave me this telephone number, and he said I could reach him here. She says...
Look, you son of a bitch, I don't know what you're talking about. You're talking about my husband, and he's been dead for 2 years.
Anyway, I wouldn't let it go. I did get in touch with the woman again. I did meet her in New York. She came down from Boston. Because, you know, this is a little too much. The clothes I described were the clothes he was buried in. The piece of paper that he gave me signed James Cullen. She brought a letter that he wrote her when he was in the Army. It had Jimmy on that. Outside of that, the signature is identical. There was only one thing that was different. I said he had a high voice. She said, oh, no, she said. He had a deep voice like yours. Oh. Then it meant he killed himself. This way, right through the voice box, whatever. Anyway, this story happened to a guy like me, and as I say, it's been haunting me now close to 40 years.
It was at this point that Telly ended his story. But a little while later, and after a little prompting, he gave a glimpse of just how powerfully the incident had affected him. Years later, on November the 22nd, 1963, he was playing golf with two friends when the same man with the same eerie voice reappeared in his life.
I'm playing golf right here in California. And I think it's the 7th hole, or the 6th hole, at El Caballero. I think it's a par 3. And as we're shooting, I'm playing with famous personality here called Dennis James, and a guy, Merrill Heater, who's the nephew of Gabriel Heater, a commentator in this country. And as we approach the tee, from far away I hear this guy on top of a hill saying, Telly, and I turn around. I started shaking because the voice was somehow familiar.
It was the voice of that man dressed in white that long ago night on Long Island.
He says, did you hear what happened in Dallas? I said, what? Then I asked Dennis, did you hear that? Yeah. I said, what did he say? He said, I don't know. And now I'm shaking. We played the 7th hole, played the 8th hole, played the 9th hole. We go inside to get something to eat. We're sitting down. Television is on. I order whatever the hell I ordered. Then Walter Cronkite breaks in. The president has just been shot in Dallas, Texas. Oh, God. That's how I was.
Same voice you heard in
Yeah.
that car that night.
Yeah.
A man
That's
dressed
it.
in white.
And an hour and a half before the bulletin broke on CBS. At time, they shot him. That's only half the story. I'm not going to tell you the rest. It doesn't end there. I wish the hell it would. But as I say, to happen to somebody like me is, I don't comprehend. Because if 2 don't make 4, 2 and 2, it startles me.
On On the first Tuesday in November every year, Australia stops for the running of the Melbourne Cup. A nation holds its breath while a race is run. To the winners, a place in history, horse and jockey in the record books, and money in the bank. But to make it to the winner's stall, it sometimes takes more than just a good horse. It's no wonder they call them punters. Trying to back a winner, they have to weigh up the form, the track, and the jockeys. While he mightn't ever be a dead cert, New Zealand-born Jim Cassidy is one jockey who's riding high in the saddle.
He's daring, he's game, he's got flair, he's got plenty of confidence in himself, which I think is one of the biggest things of a jockey.
Jim Cassidy rode to fame in Australia, appropriately enough, on a New Zealand horse called Kiwi. The race was the big one, the Melbourne Cup in 1983. And maybe it was something more than confidence, daring, or even bravery that spirited Cassidy and Kiwi past the post on that particular first Tuesday in November. You could say a little bird told Jim he was going to win. Back in New Zealand, while he was still an apprentice, Jim Cassidy had a mentor, a veteran jockey called Bill Skelton. Bill had a lifetime of experience on the track and a few words of advice for the youngsters around the stables.
One thing he always used to say was, Jimbo, he said, you always need that blummy little birdie on your shoulder.
It's the afternoon before Cup Day at Flemington in 1983. Jim Cassidy's set to ride Kiwi, the unknown, the outsider from across the Tasman. He's out checking the course, psyching himself up for the race.
Funny enough, we walked onto the track down by the winning post, and I seen this bird flapping its wing round and round in circles. Well, I was with a good mate of mine, Frank Oliver from New Zealand, and I went running down. I said, Frank, I've got to grab this bird. I said, it's the blummy bird I've got to put on my shoulder.
Tom Brassell has lived racing and has spent most of his life writing about it. The night before the Cup, he was having a drink with Jim Cassidy, and Jim told him the story of the blummy little bird.
I said to him, oh, you don't believe all that sort of stuff, do you? And he said, oh, mate, he said, this will win the Melbourne Cup. I'm not kidding you. He said, I'll tell you something else. He said, he'll be last around the home turn. And I said, Jimmy, I said, you are stone raving mad. They're the words I used. When the field jumped away, you'd swear the script had been written, because Combat came across from the outside and it got a mile in front. And as they went out of the straight, the first time there was Kiwi, stone motherless last. It was about then that Tom Brassell really began to wonder about Jim Cassidy's tip and Bill Skelton's little feathered friend.
Don't worry about anything. You've got to have that blummy little birdie on your shoulder.
Kiwis flying might beat them all. Kiwis come from last in a phenomenal performance. Won the Cup by a length and a...
I reckon birds and Kiwis can't fly, but that was one Kiwi that did fly, and probably had a little bit of assistance from the birds in doing so.
I think that little birdie just really topped it off. It was something special.